twist on asking questions. You can use Twitter with the hashtag BreakDrink, but there's also a new twist. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lulu to get going.
Okay. Well, I hope that everyone has their cell phones out because we're going to be doing some poll everywhere, some texting. So go ahead and turn those things on. We're going to be asking you to respond to a question in the beginning of our presentation, but we're going to just introduce ourselves. My name is Lacinia Lulu Baruco Calher. I work at the University of Delaware currently, but I'm going to be working at the Temple University in a month as a new Assistant Director of Staff Training and Selection there.
Hi, my name is Kyle Griffith. I'm a graduate student here at the University of Delaware. I work as a hall director here in the Office of Residence Life.
And this presentation is called The Dark Side of Advising When Challenges to Support Isn't Enough. Myself, I've had numerous years of experience advising, roughly probably 18 since we talked about that. I have been advising NRHH and recently our version of RHA on our campus. And Kyle?
I have about 6 years of advising experience from my undergrad as well as working at Oberlin College as a professional staff member. And now here I co-advise the Resident Student Association with Lulu.
So we're going to just go overview of what we're going to be doing today. We just did our introductions and welcome, so welcome everyone. And we're going to talk about what the learning outcomes are. We're going to do a self-inventory on your own advising skills. And if you're not currently an advisor, that's okay. You can use this inventory. We're going to talk about some student and group dynamics. Again, last thing is going to be case studies and hopefully have enough time for Q&A. So the learning outcomes is that each participant, hopefully you can reflect on your own advising skill, identify challenges when working with student leaders, explore your own personal and professional goals as it pertains to advising, and explore how group dynamics impacts organizational direction. So here we go. We're going to text. Woohoo! So what we want you to do is describe in 3 words. So we want you to text in 3 words about your current advising philosophy and approach. So you can be texting to 22333, and then within that text box, the first thing you do is 74425. I'm going to write that in, text it in first, and then write those 3 words in, and then we'll see how they pop up. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to take the tweets down. Hopefully no one's having any issues texting. Oh, you got a text error, someone said. So texting to 22333 is the number that you're texting to. And then in that, do 74425, and then write in the words.
Someone asked if they could tweet it instead.
Sure, tweet it any way you want to get it to us. I got it up in tweet right now. Oh, okay, we got positive situational. Empowering is another one. Hands off is another one that we're getting in. It depends on the day. Someone else wrote. Thank you so much. And I think may have one more coming in. And this person wrote about trying to use theory for best practices, but really struggles with the connection. So we're going to talk a lot about those approaches. So thank you so much for participating in that and getting on Tweet too. So the first thing we want you to do is on a piece of paper, where we actually now take it to a different type of technology using a pen and paper, is to complete this chart below. We want you to make a table. It says my needs as an advisor are, and then underneath that it says what my group needs are, and then in the next column is what my group brings and what I bring as an advisor. This chart was modified from the Leadership Challenge. So if you can have an opportunity to fill this out for yourself, we're not going to be able to obviously to share this with each other, but this is a self inventory that we want you to take right now. So just we're going to give you a minute to complete this. You can continue filling that out as we move on. And then this third part is that we want you to think about your past experiences and what has shaped your current advising approach. We want you to think about what's the ideal that you've aspired to be that's giving you direction in your advisor role. You can draw this, you can write it down, you can write someone else's name down that you think has inspired you as an advisor, but we want to make sure that you have something in mind of like what is driving you, what's giving you direction in your advising role. Go ahead and write that down. If you want to tweet that, you can. Some people have written about that there's the challenge and support and empowerment, the listen and support encouraging, inclusive, proactive, empowering. All right. So you have that inventory. Great job, everyone. So we want to talk a little bit about developing the advisor style. And from Advice for Advisor book that is from Akuho I Publications, we used a situation leadership that was by Hershey and Blatchard in 1969. And they talk about there's 4 elements to that situation leadership, which is telling, selling, participating, and delegating. And then Allen in 1983 talked about the efficiency of an advisor, and that our styles are often influenced by several characteristics, such as the university's expectations of you as an advisor, group's expectation about you as an advisor, and the level of our student development. And Allen says that there's 4 stages of student development, which is infancy, adolescence, young adulthood, and maturity. So in a quadrant model, if you look at this, you can see that there's 4 quadrants, and that the advisor style moves in a different direction, the opposite direction of the student maturity level. So say we start in quadrant 1. Quadrant 1, we have the advisor style is telling. Their role is often seen as a director or initiator, and the student's maturity level is infancy. We often see this maybe in the beginning of the year with a new group that has gotten together, maybe first year area students are getting together and they just, what's this group's about? What's our hall council about? What are we trying to do? And it's really the advisor, sometimes it's like a hall director or someone else, that's actually explaining and setting up the systems, or even the systems have already been in place for them to function. The students just need to learn how to maneuver through that. So that's that quadrant 1. Then quadrant 2 is that selling. I'm trying to sell to you that this is a great leadership experience that you should take on, and I shouldn't be doing so much. Our role is often seen as a director or as a teacher, and the student maturity here is adolescence. They're believing that they can do a little bit more. They're building their own skill set, but still need to have a lot more support than challenge. Then we get to quadrant 3, where the advisor style is participating. And we see more as the advisor, as a teacher. And then our student maturity is at that young adulthood. Often we see then this, most likely at this time of year, hopefully November, December, mid-year. And then the last one, the last quadrant where we all hope to aspire to, is this advisor style is delegating. Maybe being able to give some consulting, some advice, some guidance, and the student maturity is it's mature. They're able to really run with things, with ideas. They come to you for just, maybe that final stamp of approval, making sure that they're not doing anything illegal, but they're not really looking for you to help them through that whole process. Now, this quadrant is flowing. You don't go from one step to one step. Your group might have started at quadrant 4, but might end up in quadrant 1 because of different group dynamics and things that occurred throughout the year. So we want you to keep these quadrants in mind as we move towards talking about some of our case studies.
So the other piece here that we definitely want to make sure that everyone is taking into consideration is that, yes, we might have an advising position as our actual job on campus, as it is the case with Lulu. It's actually in her position description here. Or it could be something that you volunteer for. It could be something that just happens to fall onto your plate because it's another one of the tasks that needs to be done for your office. But when you're understanding all of that stuff, you need to understand what your student culture is. Like, what is it that is driving someone to become a student leader on your campus? Who is that person, and what is it that they might be getting from it? So is this person looking for a resume builder? Is this person looking for something for some other personal gain? Perhaps there is a drive for community service that this person wants to participate in, or maybe this person is looking to make sure that they have some experience in planning events, if that's something that would actually serve them really well if they're moving on to like hotel management or something like that. So there's a lot of different things that could be prompting someone to actually choose to be a student leader on your campus. The important thing there, too, is that how is it that we gauge who they are as their advisors? And how do we fit into that system? Because a lot of our models of group formation, we feel that they almost don't take into account the role that the advisor has in that system of people that are working together. So whereas the modules that we saw earlier before, the different quadrants, those definitely show the advisor role, but say like a Tuckman or something like that is not going to take into consideration what the advisor's role is in all that stuff. So what is it that you are going to bring to this system? How is it that your understanding of your role as an advisor is going to affect the other people that you're working with and for? And how is it that you might impact the ability of the group to actually function and get work done as effectively as possible if you are bringing some of your own baggage or possibly some of your own passions into the work that students are trying to do?
And the reason why we're calling this the dark side of advising is that often we don't have that conversation about when a group doesn't function. What happens when the advisor and the group are at different places in their goals and they're trying to achieve different things? And that you as your characteristics that we talked about, the expectations are from the university, and then that conflicts with the group. But yet, like for myself, that's my responsibility is primarily advising of this one group. But if it conflicts our expectations, what happens? What is going on with that group? What's going on with your role as an advisor? And for myself, the last 15 years, I've really enjoyed advising, but this past year has taught me a lot about who I am as an advisor and understand a little bit more about our student motivation for leadership. Because I had a group that you may see through some of these case studies that didn't function as a group should have functioned when they were when they started in the forming and starting to get through the storming stages. They were definitely, their motivation was not from the leadership lens, but from a friendship lens. And that directed the type of work that I did with them, or the limitations that we could have worked as advisors with them, and where we could have taken them as leaders. So we want to provide some case studies, and this is where we're going to ask some participation. And you can obviously tweet this stuff, or you can put it, text it, type it into the text boxes that is shown on the screen. And so we have case study 1.
So last week, Kwame was reelected to his Vice President of Operations position on the Executive Board of his Resident Student Association by a clear majority of the resident student population. Part of the responsibilities of his position include facilitating campus-wide election processes for all of the Executive Board members, and he takes great pride in the fact that he had a 65% turnout for this election. Despite this accomplishment, Kwame appears not to be as excited as he was earlier in the week. During your one-on-one with him, he tells you that, due to family finances, he needs to live at home with his father and commute to school next year.
So what we want you to do is, what do you feel about the forces motivating the students in this situation? And what are the first steps you would need to do to deal with this situation? We also want you to refer to those 4 quadrants, where you are as an advisor and where the student maturity is at. So go ahead, either you could tweet this or you could write it in that text box, please. So we start with the first comment. What do you feel are the forces motivating the students in this situation? We have 1 comment so far. It's a short-term thinking, trying to encourage the students to look at the bigger picture, trying to get them to step back of what's motivating them now and how they can influence their long-term goals. Fear. Someone wrote fear, which is an important factor in motivation of individuals, the limitation of fear. And we did this case study with our advisors. We do a once-a-month advisor group meeting training. And when we did this case study, and talked about what's the first steps that you need to deal with this situation, we need to talk about where the person's motivation is with this position. What is it that they were excited about this position? Where do they see themselves within this organization? We understand that there are the finance restrictions that occurs and the different factors that gets compounded into your leadership roles. But let's try to talk through that, try to figure out where I can help you figure out all the steps in order for you to be functional in this organization and in this group.
All right, so we have a second case study here. So Kate is the public relations chair of the Resident Student Association. She is responsible for the advertising for all of the events of the Resident Student Association, but also for marketing the sponsored vendors, such as on-campus marketing, to the students in the residence halls. Brad, Kate's best friend, as well as the treasurer on the executive board, has noticed that there have been a number of emails addressed to Kate on the RSA account that have not been answered for the past 3 weeks. Brad tells Kendra, the RSA president, who brings this issue to your attention during a one-on-one.
So how do you feel the group dynamic is in this situation can be affected?
And also, how do you work to continue to develop the leadership of your executive board and general membership while dealing with this issue?
So go ahead again, tweet or write in the text box any of your comments. Even if you're just by yourself, you have no one else to share an idea with, just go ahead and put it out there. And this is going to, again, we're trying to make a community of leaders here. We could share ideas and try to brainstorm a solution to the situation. I'm going to show the case study one more time. Again, Kate is the PR chair. She's responsible for keeping up on all the marketing of the RSA organization. And then one of her friends, who also happens to be the treasurer, has noticed that emails are not being responded and has a conversation with the president, who brings it to you and your one-on-one as an advisor on what to do. So how do you feel that the group dynamic in this situation can affect its outcome? How do you work to continue developing the leadership of your e-board and the general body while dealing with this situation? What do you think is going on here? We'll give it one more minute for more respondents. Someone wrote in that there is maybe perhaps a lack of trust that they have not talked about among the group. Maybe there is that relationship of being friends, but how does that translate over to our relationship as e-board members in a different lens? Someone else commented that maybe Kate does not understand her role and understanding like the responsibility of following through with the different vendors, especially on campus marketing, since they do have a quick turnaround on respondents. If you have finals kits being delivered, you need to be able to really understand when are those going to be delivered and being able to get people involved to distribute those. And if you're not on top of that, that can come off as a negative connotation on your organization. And for our group, Kaya, do you want to share about what our group came up with?
Sure. Well, in our group, there were a number of people who happened to be friends on the executive board last year. And this was a significant issue for us, and it did cause a number of cliques to form on the executive board. So then people would be blaming each other, but then sort of bring things to us through these clandestine ways of, oh, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but this might not be happening. And we ended up having to bring it all to their attention, stepping back into one of those earlier quadrant roles as advisors, and making sure that everyone could renorm their expectations for each other in the position. Just because, honestly, that's something that affects more than just your organization. It affects your public relations with the different students on campus. It affects your relationships with the parents who are willing to pay the money for these kits. It affects your relationships with on-campus marketing and whatever other vendors you might have on your campus. So it definitely is something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And it's just unfortunate that sometimes our executive boards don't trust each other, like someone suggested, that they can't bring that to each other's attention.
There is an assumption that groups, leaders in an advanced group, such as maybe an RHA, should have more advanced leadership skills. But depending on the dynamic and the structure of your institution, your RHA board might be just brand new members who may not have even understand the organization. They may be just sophomores or freshmen, as we find out from all our institutions. So that the advisor role is much more heavy in that quadrant one. The telling and the student's role is in that maturity is in infancy. And as advisors, you have to kind of reconcile that with yourself, because the conception of what you feel of as an advanced leadership role versus a beginning entry level, like maybe a floor rep or a president of the floor, or maybe in the president, or just being serving on the e-board of your hall council. When you get to more advanced organizations like an RHA or an SGA, or maybe a programming board that you have on your campus, you are making a lot of assumptions that the students should be more advanced in their leadership development and their own personal development. We need to have a step back when we do that assumption, because again, we need to look at these students for who they are and where they're coming from in their structure of their institution. So this case study, this was weekly for us last year, when we were putting it back to them about the conflict of their friendship versus their e-board roles, and where did that impede or restricted the organization from moving forward. I mean, it did. It really did impede from the organization being able to do anything together as a group. We're going to move forward to our third case study.
So it is just after spring break, and you are noticing a difference in the way your executive board is interacting with the rest of the membership at NRHH meetings, which is the National Residence Hall Honorary. The executive board no longer spends time casually speaking with the general membership before and after the meeting. As you are getting ready to leave the National Residence Hall Honorary meeting, you overhear part of a conversation between Tamara, a new inductee this semester, and Jacob, another new inductee, while they are walking out. "Why do I even come to these meetings?" Tamara asked. "I don't know," Jacob responded. "Maybe that's why they make the minutes so unintelligible."
And we'll come back to that case study so you can read it more, but we'll give you the questions.
So the questions are, what do you feel are the forces motivating the students in this situation? What are the first steps you need to take to deal with this issue?
We'll give you about a minute to be able to either tweet this or respond in the text box again.
So we have maybe they really do not understand the value of the meeting or the expectations of the position, speaking for the executive board members.
And that can be true, and that's something as an advisor maybe that you need to do a reflection of expectations, review of the Constitution, and maybe a norming activity for the organization and new members to understand what the organization's goals are and what everyone's level of participation should be at.
And realistically, there are very few constitutions that will have in their executive board member position descriptions interact with General Assembly members after and before every single General Assembly meeting. So that's something that is more of a group norm that you can work on with them as opposed to an official expectation of the registered student organization.
We have some other comments talk about being able to talk to them about expectations and goals about being an organization, especially when you are a new inductee, and that connection to NRHH, and National Residence Hall Honorary. What is this about? What am I doing here? And then there is the issue of like the perception of what the minutes appear to be like. And so maybe as an advisor reviewing that with a secretary, we had this issue in our organization, and so I had our secretary, I didn't come out and say, look, you can't read these minutes. But I had them do an exercise of collecting different minutes from other organizations and have them come up with their favorite style of writing and have them come up with their own style, and their minutes improved immensely the next week upon doing that type of exercise.
The other piece here that is important to take note of is that if the executive board is not showing that they're excited to be at the given organization, then they're essentially killing the generativity of the organization. I know that we spoke about some other models of leadership and working as an advisor, but through the leadership identity development model through Comavez, getting to that stage 5 of the leadership identity development model, where you have generativity, where you have leaders who are actually going to be invested enough in their organization, not just for the present, but also for the future. This is where that really comes into case, the situation. We have leaders on our organization's e-boards that aren't getting people excited to apply to be in the executive board positions after they're gone. So they're essentially killing their organization with their attitudes and with their affect at these General Assembly meetings.
So we want to provide some opportunities for some Q&A, opportunities for you as participants to ask some questions of us, but also ask questions of each other about the different roles of advising, talking about the truth about sometimes that advising is not always the golden rod that should be given out to other individuals. As Kyle had explained, that it's written into my job description only this past year. It had been, like advising RHA and NRHH has been a committee work. And so something that you had gotten during the summer, surprise, it's part of your assignment for the year. You may have it only for a year, may have it for 2 years. You may have a passion for it. You may not have a passion for it. And then recently with my role, and I have been asking and for this position to be able to let's have it more intentional, have it more purposeful, more directional, give more resources to the organization. It has resulted that the organization this year, as an RSA, our group this year, has exceeded our expectations heads over heels, but because of our work from last year of shoulder tapping, lots of conversations with individuals during the summer, Skyping with them, and then weekly one-on-ones and activities with them using Strengths Quest as one of our foundation of our theoretical structures on our leadership development, has taken a group to win a Concur Program of the Year award. They're going to get ready to do more bids for No Frills. So it's been really exciting, but coming from a year that it has been really something that struggled as advisors for ourselves, especially when you've had years of really great experiences to work with students who really struggle with their own idea, concept of what the organization is about. So someone writes in, how do you teach advisors to be proactive when working with the organizations rather than just reacting to issues as they come? I think that I'll answer that, and someone else who would love to write in can answer that too. You have to find that balance between the university expectations and the group expectations. There are times, and last year there were times where I had to step in and be more the telling role, taking on a role that I did not want to take on, but because the institution has a certain expectation, because our organization is seen as one of the 3 top organizations in the institution, and a lot of other offices were looking at kind of tearing the group down, there were a lot of times I had to step up and advocate or say no to certain things. At other times, I'm much more about being able to see if I can forecast when things are going to happen. Like we know that we knew that in November, after their success, hopefully success at Concur, that there will be some storming, and the group has we have gotten to the storming stage, our group, at a really pivotal time, which we think is great. Unfortunately, I would be leaving, and then Kyle next semester would be job searching, and so we're hoping that we provide a lot of support to them in these following weeks, that they could keep on through that storming and get to the performing stage. But we're able to forecast those moments, those issues, because of just that, the cycle of leadership development and knowing our student development. But then there's times where those issues come up that it's, again, you have to reconcile it between the university expectations and what's the group expectations.
And I think that's something that's really helped us this year that's different from what we did last year, is we actually have multiple theoretical frameworks that we use with the students to actually help them with their individual and group leadership development. Mm-hmm. So this year we've incorporated the FISH philosophy as well as the Strengths Quest. And I mean, behind the scenes, we have our own leadership challenge, we have leadership identity development, we have a lot of different things going on. But we have worked with the curriculum that's available through the Strengths Quest website to really provide a stronger basis for our executive board to really understand what it is that's motivating them, and then also work to make it meaningful for them to continue to motivate them. So there were a lot of things that that we've had to deal with as far as being reactive, as far as like finding people to fill temporary positions and work in those cases. But I think that in understanding just the flow, the ebb and flow of what goes on in your organization, I would ask them to create a calendar, to have the entire year mapped out in order to understand, okay, these are the times when you'd be busy academically. These are the times when you'd be busy with your own personal things. Where are the times when we can really put in that extra work into our organization? And we can be proactive about setting up that schedule and having it like on commitment from our organization in order to really capitalize on their efforts all throughout the year. Because these organizations are a definite commitment for our students, but we have to give them a reason to continue to be committed. And I think that having that framework of FISH and making it fun and really being there for people, as well as using the Strengths Quest and giving them a new lens to understand themselves, has been a really great set of tools for us in understanding how to make sure that we can be as proactive as possible in trying to head off issues with our students.
Another person asked, how do you work with burnout from some students who feel that being super involved and then all of a sudden they have to take a step back during their senior year, perhaps their senior year spring semester? I think that you have to work from an individual case from here too. Again, that using that situational leadership philosophy of that, you know, what's going on with that student, where they're at, and is where they're at the good for the organization, what's best for the institution, and what's best for them. I often work with this with my RAs, and I always am asking them, I'm like, it's not about you being an RA, it's about you. You first, then everything else. I know that you hear students first, but it's actually you. What's going on with you? If you are not happy, if you are not motivated, if you are not excited to be here, there is no way you can hide that from anyone else. And it's going to affect the group immensely more than you can imagine by your ability to be here. You have to think, can you be here physically and mentally? And if that's you're struggling with that, it is okay for you to pass on the baton. It is okay to prep someone else and let them take on something. Some things are going to fall through the cracks. We know that. Some things are just not going to function the same as when another person's in that position. We know that. But we need to allow all the people to step into those roles, and it's going to just transfer into a different view, a different way. And so I often talk with the students about that, the ones who are feeling burnt out. The one also, also students who I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but I think that this is as much as you can get out of this organization as a leader. There's not much more that I see that you can develop, and you're feeling the same way. Then maybe it's time for you to move on to a different organization. And we had this happen to us last year. You can name it. Everything happened to us last year. But we had two students who, for whatever reasons, their motivation changed. They found other organizations that they wanted to be involved in, they were more passionate about. But because they felt they had a commitment to their friendship, their friends, not to the organization, to their friends, they came. But by their presence, it was really distracting to the group and caused a dysfunctional effect to the group. And so a lot of those conversations like, what's the best thing for you? What's going to make you happy? What's going to help you get past this? Because when you come down to it, it's just a line on a resume, but what you could get out of this experience is what you can articulate. And if you can't get anything out of the experience by articulating it, let's think about something else that's going to help you along that.
We have another question here. So I also have issues with past leadership, now a general member, being stronger than the voice of the current leadership.
Wow.
And looking for suggestions. And that's actually a really, really good question, because that's something that not many organizations have to deal with. It's great when a leader will step down and perhaps pass that baton, as Lulu was saying.
Yep.
But at the same time, that leader doing that leadership in his or her own way, I think that there needs to be a qualifying conversation that the advisor or one of the executive board members can have with that leader who's now just a general member, and figuring out like what is the motivation for being as vocal as that person might be, and where is it that that's is actually coming from. Is it for the benefit of the organization? Is it that some communication skills need to be developed, or are there some perception issues about how a person might be bitter about not being on the executive board anymore? And really understanding where that person's feelings are coming from and how is it that that person is impacting the organization as a whole because of that.
Also think about like how is there other ways that this person can participate in the organization in an informal way? Can they chair or be a task force chair of something? Can they take the leadership? Can they be a liaison with something, an organization on campus or a department, and yet be able to contribute positively back to the organization? And then talking also with your current leadership about, or first observing your current leadership about where they're at developmentally. Are they, in the beginning stages of their leadership as, and they're stepping in, and obviously this person may have had some previous experiences. They're a little bit more sophisticated on how they conduct meetings, on how they can get people engaged. Are they charismatic? Are they really, they electrify the group? And then the new leadership may or may not do that. And so, and that's okay, but being able to have a conversation about what is their roles, what is it they're hoping to achieve in their roles, how does that come across, what are some strategies to help them do that? One of the things that we've been working on is bringing, and we have these oral communication fellows, experts on how you do presentations on campus. And so bring them in to do some presentations and observation of our group to give them feedback, peer-to-peer feedback, to be able to give them a little bit more of that skill set development, and just try to help that individual who had a past experience, who was a past leader, maybe give them a different role within the organization.
And it is a generativity issue again. Like that person has leadership that can be passed on. So how is it that we can tap into that in a positive way? Perhaps that person can come to the executive board meeting and then do that presentation or offer some feedback or really make sure that they pass on the resources that they know to the executive board members. So it's not disruptive perhaps in a general assembly meeting, but it can still be used and taken advantage of while that person's still around on campus.
So we wanted to present our information if you wanted to ask more questions of us, and there is my information, Lulu, and Kyle's information. If you have more questions, please go ahead and post it.
And y'all are both on Twitter, right?
Yeah, we're both on Twitter. I'm El Baruco, which I'm sorry, I should spell that because that's like impossible to spell. L-B-A-R-R-U-E-C-O.
And my Twitter handle is AVRGTWEETPETE. We'll actually put that on the screen right now so that everyone can have that.
Thank y'all for doing the session today. We're at time right now. There was a question about helicopter parents that I would love to talk more about. We got to get to the next session.
Jeff, can you repeat that? You were breaking up.
We did have a question about helicopter parents, which would be interested in talking about, but we're about at the time right now, and need to get to the next session.
Oh, okay. Whoever wants that question, put it on tweet, and maybe we can have a conversation through there about the impact of helicopter parents on our leadership.
Great idea.